I'm very sorry for my voice, but I have a very bad cold. It's not COVID. And the only reason I came here is because Iotis threatened me. He said that he would curse me if I don't come. Yeah, don't laugh, because the previous time he cursed me, I lost my hair. So, first of all, may I ask you, where are you from? Albania. And you? Albania. And you, sir? United States. Right. Okay. And Todorova is from?
Bulgaria.
From Bulgaria. Okay. So we all speak the nationalist language, that is, huh? Yes, I'm Greek. But when I was young, my father used to tell me, and he would impress this upon me. He would say that, son, we are not from here. We are not from here. Because we are Greeks from Africa. So we're not really Greeks, sort of. Okay. Now, part of my work as an anthropologist is with people from Sudan. So when I'm in Sudan, I used to go there for almost 30 years now, people were asking me, where are you from? But before that, he would say that I'm a Khawaja. Now, Khawaja is a term which really says that you are a white foreigner, but you are more sort of the European type than, let's say, the American. Khawaja is, so I'm a Gharbawi, I'm a Westerner, or I'm a Khawaja, I'm a white. And then at the second level, they would say, okay, but where are you from really? And I would say Yunan, which is Greek in Arabic. Say, oh, right, okay, which was a good thing, because it would have been very bad if I had been a Baritani from Britain, since Sudan was a colony of the British. And then I would ask the people I was working with, the older generations, and you're Sudani. They said, no, not Sudan. Where are you from? Say, I'm a Jali, I'm a Shaigi. Now, Jali, Shaigi, all these are tribes. We don't use the term anymore because it's a sort of ethnic groups, perhaps we could tell. These were the older people. They were not Sudani. The younger people, when asked them in the university, they say, I'm Sudani. Now, Sudani means Sudanese, and in modern parlance, it means Sudanese national. That is not an Egyptian, not a Somali. But in the old term, in the old times, it meant black slave. So the older people did not accept, easily at least, a term that, although it had the mantle of the nationalistic discourse, really implied a status which was not so high. So I think that before I talk about nationalism, I should say a few things about identity, and then perhaps a few things about ethnicity. And identity, you see, is a relationship. It's not something that one possesses objectively. That means that identities are always dynamic, they're historically situated, and they change with time. I'm Greek because I'm not Turkish. I'm a man because I'm not a woman. I'm white because I'm not black. I am from the south because I'm not from the north. So on and so forth. You understand what I'm saying, right? Okay. However, this is not what people generally think. An aura of basic permanence surrounds the identity of the I, the core, the kernel of our being. But also perhaps the many layers, the social layers, acquired and formulated during our life. So I am a Greek because I was born here, but I'm not a Greek because my father was not born here. I'm also a social anthropologist. I'm a professor. I'm a man. I'm Christian. I'm Protestant. So all these things, they are layers. And until the 1970s, identity did not interest anthropologists because it was supposedly performed, that is, lived out. What I do now is a performance, as you can see. We always perform. We perform roles. It was supposedly performed, identity, within stable groups, within communities or tribes or peoples. So in that way, it was equal to culture. So it was something that was supposed to be objective and measurable. So the Greeks lived in Greece and they had a Greek culture. And the Bulgarians lived in Bulgaria and they had a Bulgarian culture. So obviously and problematically, the Greeks and the Bulgarians cannot be the same people. So it was absolutely logical. Then we realized, of course, that cultures and identities, even within Greece, or within Bulgaria, just to take these two examples, but within the United States or wherever, Sudan, are hybrids. They're intermixings of multiple encounters or even confrontations between often unequal societies, distinct ethnic populations. And these encounters take place in long periods of time. This is so, as I said, not only for the Americans, which is the obvious example because they comprise of Englishmen, Germans, Irishmen, Indians, Italians, and so forth, but also for the Greeks, who, though they may pride themselves as direct descendants of Pericles of Athens and Alexander of Macedonia, in reality, the Greeks and their culture has changed through the aeons a lot and has lost and has incorporated countless elements from all over the place. So I don't think that Pericles or Alexander or Socrates would find very many things in common if they could somehow come with a time machine here. Okay? So identities and cultures are seen by anthropologists as historical and deeply political in nature constructions. When I say this term to our students, constructions, they don't like it. Because construction is something for them, the way that they understand it, that it's not natural. So it could be false. It could be inauthentic. If something is constructed, it could be inauthentic. Okay? the bulldog, you know the bulldog. It's not an authentic breed of dog, okay? But of course, identities and cultures are authentic, although they are social constructions, and they are authentic because they produce specific results at the political and at the interpersonal level. And they are authentic also in the eyes of their members. And they are legitimated, as a rule, not always, not to the same degree, by some form of primordialism. We have always been there. We all know, of course, that the Indians, the Chinese, and the Greeks are the most ancient nations of this planet. So it's kind of primordial thing. So this makes our job as anthropologists somewhat delicate when we discuss such things with our friends, members from various ethnic or national groups who present themselves. Of course we're Bulgarians, of course we are Italians, of course we are this and the other. And I think that the same difficulty should apply to missionaries and to all other people who talk with people in these terms of identity. Now, if we go down to ethnicity, this is a rather new concept to anthropology and to the social sciences, and it somehow has come to supplant the classifications in terms of tribe and race. Now, race has been discredited by the Nazis, and I'm afraid by the Americans as well, through the racial thing with the black Americans, who may not be black American, but they may be African American. So it's and tribe, it has this bad smell, bad odor of primitivism and colonialism. If you belong to a tribal group, you're not really that modern. So, additionally, though, there is another problem with ethnicity, that the way it's now employed is so huge, so general, so broad, that it makes it almost meaningless to talk about ethnicity. So ethnicity also is a politically loaded term. Sometimes whatever unity the term claims is defensive. For example, some people take the Balkans. I don't know the Balkans very well, and now I don't even know if they exist. As Aliki told us. So some people are ethnic Albanians in northern Macedonia. We shouldn't be really Macedonia because we are here as well, and so it's kind of defensive thing when we talk in these terms. In other places, under different circumstances, ethnicity is a cultural badge of honor. It's a way of making profits. For example, Italian American, very good, very good. Huh? We have very nice films, Robert De Niro, ethnic food. Chinese food, very good, ethnic food, nice. But it could have also an overlap and be situational. So the Chinese in Malaysia, you know, there are a lot of Chinese, but the Chinese of Malaysia, when they go to America, they're Asians. So there are different levels. So for many researchers, the real issue with ethnicity is its relation to politics and power. Issues of representation, access to resources. Ethnic minorities is a well-known and occasionally explosive issue. We all have heard about the Rohingya in Myanmar, which is not really Myanmar, but it's Burma, but it's not Burma because it's Myanmar. The Tamil, the Aborigines in Australia, the Roma people. So such being the case, if ethnicity arises out of power differentials of ethnic politics, then ethnic politics are by definition the politics of marginality. Somehow, when we have ethnic politics, it's not good to have ethnic politics. And we don't have ethnic minorities in this country, as you all know. We have Greek Muslims, they're not Turks. So we have to be very careful, with these things. Now, the term nation is old. Nationalism is new. I think that the term nation is also in the Bible in one way or another. We Christians, we are a new nation. So I would have expected us to say, where are you from? I say, I'm from the Christian nation, but it happens to live in Greece or Bulgaria. In the past, in the pre-modern so-called era, the nation referred to people who lived together in a place and they shared a culture, but the term did not really have any immediate political connotations. Then nationalism became associated with the state, although this is not always the case, because states did not simply create nations. They tried many times, but take, for example, today Libya. We all know what happened in Libya, but also take my word for Sudan, which in 2011 was separated between North Sudan and South Sudan. Sudan and South Sudan. In state nationalism, the territorially bounded state assumes a loyalty that transcends that of family, of kinship, of culture group, or ethnicity. This can be easily identified in the African context, and it's always good to remember bigger things, not only the Balkans or Southeast Europe, but Africa, Asia, South America. It's important when we talk about these things. Where a national state includes a number of, in Africa, a national state includes a number of ethnic groups. There are 102, people say, ethnic groups or tribes in Sudan. Then we all know Nelson Mandela. He was an ethnic Xhosa, but we know him as a South African. Now, the Xhosa are the biggest group together with the Zulu. Okay? So he was a South African patriot. So perhaps the nation should be seen as a form rather than merely as a content of various national identities. So the nation state per se was conceived in 18th century Europe. It was closely linked to the rise of industrial capitalism and was founded on the ideas of the French Revolution about brotherhood, freedom, equality. Industrial capitalism, though, it was important, especially print. The prints. I read the Times, and I know that some people in Liverpool also and they read also the Times, and some in Manchester, they read the Times. So we all read the Times, and we all read then in the same medium, the same language. And so this makes, So the history of a great part of modern Europe is the move from the multi-ethnic empires into almost national states. In certain places, this has already happened. This had already happened after the fashion many centuries earlier. Take, for example, Great Britain, an imperial state of English, Welsh, Scots, and Irish, at least part of them. We don't know for how long, but anyway. Another perhaps less known example is that of Germany. It was princedoms of adjacent lands united under the Prussians. When? In 1871. That's yesterday in terms of history. Huh? Similarly with Italy, 1861. So what exactly were the Italians or the Germans or even the Greeks before 1871, 1861, 1821? So there are questions. Many countries or states today have histories which go back many hundreds of years, if not more so. I love Pericles. Before the emergence of modern nationalistic discourse, but these histories have been reconstructed as national histories only retrospectively. If you like Shakespeare, King Henry V, who won the Battle of Agincourt against the French in 1415, was presented as almost a nationalist by Shakespeare in 1599. So it was this retrospective. And if that is so, it is correct to say that nationalism is not just a doctrine, but it is a more basic way of talking, thinking, and acting. Something that can be projected backwards because in the present it is considered to be the very essence of normality. Because if today we don't have a national identity, what are we? We cannot think ourselves otherwise, because then we become stateless. You wouldn't be able to visit Greece if you had been stateless. Let's go a bit back to history and its repercussions. From the point of view of the Enlightenment and the French Revolution, nationalism was considered to be a good thing, a positive step towards freedom that was taken by various peoples. The Greek Revolution of 1821 against the Ottomans, other struggles by Balkan peoples, struggles for freedom, for independence, or again the various Latin American, South American republics. The picture we get is people fighting in order to create a free homeland, to get their own country, which may not exist as such, or which may have existed under the yoke of colonial occupation. Take, for example, India. We're not really quite sure that India existed because or in spite of the Indian colonization, right? Or the Sudan. Many nationalisms are authoritarian, even genocidal against their enemies. Take, for example, the Nazi form of nationalism, in whose name terrible crimes were committed against not only other nations, but also against ethnic minorities of the Third Reich itself. Not to say anything about the political and ideological enemies of the state, who were routinely portrayed as less German because you are a socialist or a communist or a homosexual, you are less German than us. So you have to go to Dachau. So it sounds, no, take for example the following words. Your life is bound up with the life of your whole people. The nation is not merely the root of your strength, it is the root of your very life. It sounds innocuous. I mean, even Volodymyr Zelensky could have said that, or even Putin could have said that, perhaps also Biden and so on and so forth. It was Hitler who said that. An evil dictator who, in the name of this, killed so many millions of people. Of course, there is an ethno-nationalism now, another thing. In the Balkans and things, we know a lot about this, about the terrible things that came here. And I always wanted to ask people, why on the one hand we have the Serbs, for example, and on the other hand we have the Muslims? So again, this kind of strange inequivalence here. So this allows me to say that all nationalisms share characteristics with ethnicity, such as the selective and creative construction of history, some emotive sense of group communion and cohesion, and some overarching sense of unity. What brings the two together, nationalism and ethnicity, is the claims of an ethnic group to its own state, or to autonomy or sovereignty within a state. And it's not only the Serbs, it's not only the Croats, it's not only the neighborhood, it's also the Kurds. It's also the Palestinians. So some of these are very good struggles. Some others may not diverge. So it's, again, very difficult for anthropologists, to talk about these things. To recap then, nationalism is an ideology that emphasizes loyalty, devotion, allegiance to a nation or a nation-state. It's an ideology. In other words, it is what holds us true about a specific group. A nation is a group of people with a common language, history, culture, and usually geographical territory. A state is a political construction characterized by formal institutions of government, including laws, boundaries, and sovereignty. We think today that nationalism is inevitable. Ernest Gellner, a famous anthropologist, the way he put it, a man must have a nationality as he must have a nose and 2 ears. The real concept of nationalism is, in this understanding, is the concept then, not of a community, but of a select community. A community with a purpose. A community with a purpose which usually goes against another similar community. A nation, in that sense, cannot stand on its own. It cannot exist without counter-nations. And to me, this is the secret of nationalism. From the point of view, and with this I finish, from the point of view of Christianity, I think that nationalism is a deadly enemy. And it has not only to do with primarily the Orthodox churches and to a certain degree with the Catholics, but it also has to do with the evangelicals and with the Protestants more generally. from another point of view, that nationalism, to have a national identity, it means to inhabit the modern world, to inhabit modernity. Okay? So sometimes I fear, especially when I see evangelicalism in places like South America or Central and Western Africa, that it goes there with the baggage of Western modernity. So then it may not go there with the label nationalism, but it goes there with the enveloping, discursive underpinnings of nationalism. And with this, we do a great disservice, first to our Lord, and second to the people who we think that they would be interested in the good tidings. Thank you very much.